parenting your children and learning new ways to parent your children. Statistically, Houston population is 50% white, 23% African American, and 43% Hispanic. Children in CPS custody, this is in Harris County. 52%, I'm trying to read this and I don't have my glass on. 52% of the children in CPS custody are African American, 15% white, and 28% Hispanic. So you've got a small part of the population with a larger part of the children in custody. 45% of the children, overall, 45% of the children in custody is neglectful supervision, 26% is physical abuse, and those are the top two reasons kids are in care in Harris County. And children waiting for adoption, 47% are African American, 27% Hispanic, and 20% white. But statistics are really skewed. And CPS spends over $1 million. We as a community who pay our taxes spend over $1 million a year for kids in CPS custody. So us parenting, being example to those around us who are parenting, is a really big deal. And one of the other facts that I'm not sure you're aware of that just makes me really sad is that overall in our state, where's my numbers? This youth in prison, 13% of the overall state population is African American, 13%. 40% of the children in prison are African American. So those statistics are high, and parenting skills are the only way that we can stop that. Because if we don't stop, and we all of us pay for everybody who's in jail, we all pay, because it's part of our communities. It's part of the children that are breaking into our homes or making those bad choices. So what I love about Love and Logic and why I feel it's so important to teach it is because we have to teach our children to make good decisions. And we have to teach them to respect us and respect authority. Because statistically, we're losing generations of kids. And African American children have at the highest risk of that. So as a community overall, we want to figure out how we can remedy this. And I think one of the key things, each one of us being a good role model as a parent to our kids' friends, to our friends, to people in the community, makes a huge difference. People see how your children treat you, and they want to know, how come she's got her kids, that she tells them to do something and they just do it. They don't yell and scream and cry. How come they're not out breaking the rules? How come they're not? Because you've created a bond and a relationship with your child. And that's the key to keeping your kids safe and sane as they get through junior high and high school, and then they progress on to be successful adults. So I'm always looking at statistics. I'm always looking at facts about our city and what we as a community can do for our city. And those are just some ones that were a little startling. I didn't realize those. So I want to review a little bit more about. I want to review what we've talked about the last couple weeks. And I know some of you weren't here and some of you have been here the whole time. But our first session, we talked about putting an end to arguing, backtalk, and begging. And I don't know do any of you remember some of the things we might use when we do that? Do we argue?
I know.
I know. Very good. Very good. Now, has anybody tried that?
I tried.
How'd it go? All the time. Okay.
It don't work for me.
So when we say it doesn't work, one of the keys to keeping Love and Logic, the parents who are most successful at this, keep anger, sarcasm. Sarcasm is really hard to keep out, but anger and sarcasm out of our voices. We keep monotone. So that's when one of the little key thing is, remember, when your child starts arguing with you, you go brain dead, because if you keep your brain running, you might start arguing back. We want to prove our point. We want to show that we're right. But if we're arguing with our kids, we're never going to win. Sort of like telling somebody stubborn what to do. Remember we talked about that? Go to bed. They're not going to bed. Brush your teeth. They're not brushing their teeth. You know, you give an option. Are you going to go to bed now? Or are you going to go, or would you like to go in 15 minutes? It's not go to bed. They know they're going to bed, but you're giving them options, which sounds silly, but when you're talking about little kids, when you're talking about teenagers and you're giving them options, do you want to come in at 10 or 11? They're still coming in. But, and I know this is, it sounds strange and different, but if you want to have a relationship with that child, you've got to give them some of the power, and choices are a way to give them some of the power. Because who of us wants to be bossed around our whole life? Who wants a job, a boss who tells us what to do all the time and then gets on us every time we mess up? And that's what a lot of times we as parents do that to our kids. So we say, I know, I love you too much to argue with you. And yes, they're going to roll their eyes, and they're going to, but I do that with my 16-year-old because she's fabulous at arguing, and it just wears me down. And when they wear you down, what do? You give in. And when you give in, what have you done? You've lost. So the next time you haven't taught them anything other than arguing with me works. Arguing with me gets my attention, and if I bug mom long enough, I'm going to get my way. If I'm in the back of the car and I'm begging her to stop somewhere, if I beg long enough, finally she's going to go, all right, be quiet. You know, I can't take it anymore. But when you shut it down with, I know, and then let it go, and if you can't not crack a smile and you can't not, then leave the room. I love you too much to argue with you. Go and stand in the bathroom and laugh or giggle or whatever, get that sarcasm out. But it's the key thing is they know they can argue with us. We all did it with our moms. We knew what we can get away with. And so you've got to figure out a way, because that is the first thing is the arguing. The second thing is providing reasonable consequences. You know, if there's, some people will say there's nothing that works with my kid. I can take away stuff. I can take away everything they have. They can be grounded all day long. Nothing works. Nothing works until you have a relationship with your child. And I know as a parent, you think, I'm your parent, so we have a relationship. But unless you have a give and take relationship, what's your relationship with somebody who it's only one-sided? There's no relationship. If you are always the one that tells what to do, there's no relationship, so they don't care. It's like what, you know, we talked about before. If you have a friend and you do something to hurt that friend's feeling, and you do, that makes you feel bad because you have a relationship with that person. But if somebody cuts in front of you, or you cut in front of somebody else and you don't know that person, you don't think about it long. You know, it doesn't hurt your feelings. So if your child doesn't have their relationship with you maybe shattered, or not shattered completely, but right then and there, it doesn't matter what you take away or what you do, because you have there's no mutual. And so building that relationship back up is key. And that key is not arguing, setting firm goals, and consequences. You know, we talked about letting kids suffer consequences. I got a bad grade because you didn't help me remind me to do my homework. I know you feel sorry about that. You know, let them, the natural consequences is you're going to get a bad grade if you don't turn in your homework. But you're not going to ruin your relationship with your child by screaming at them every night to do their homework. Let the consequences be that they get a bad grade, or they have to stay in from recess, or, you know, if they don't get up in time to make their lunch, they go hungry that day. Let them suffer some consequences lovingly. Not like, I told you so, I told you you'd be hungry, just, Mom, it's really hungry day. I know, when you don't get up in time and make your lunch, sometimes you can get really hungry. So those kind of consequences, lovingly, with empathy, is the way you build that relationship. And you can build that relationship back if you have a child that you feel like there's just nothing that's working. Or you know somebody who has a child, the neighbor kid. The neighbor kid always is the child on the street. And you know, one of the things about there's five ways to build a relationship. And one of the first one is making sure when you say hello to your child or goodbye to them that it's special. That you make sure you give them a hug and a kiss in the morning. Have a great day, I love you. They come home, I'm so glad to see you, I missed you. Did you have, you know, what was the best thing about your day? Making sure they feel special, like you really do care about them. It's not just get in the car, I've been waiting for you all afternoon, I've been sitting here, what are you doing, talking to your friend over there? You know, I've been sitting here for an hour. You know, we get caught up in that, and when you wake up in the morning, oh, you're looking good today. Oh, look at, you picked a great outfit. Something, let them know that they're special to you. Because they've got enough going on. We hear about bullying and all that. They've got enough going on. And if their teacher's having a bad day, they've got that going on. Bus driver, who else? Let them know that they're the most important person in your world. And notice something special about them. Your handwriting is great. You colored your toenails just perfectly. That's a color I like. Or whatever they do. And thanks for being nice to your brother. I noticed that you let him go first. Notice something about them. Take time to notice. I know when somebody notices, if our spouse or sister or friends notices something, looks really great, or I really love the way you sent that thank you note to me, or that makes us feel special. So think about how we could build a relationship with our child, helping them feel special, noticing something about them. Leave the sarcasm someplace else. I know it's hard. Sarcasm, I think sometimes we find ourselves, it's kind of we're a sarcastic society. We're always using sarcasm, or it's not really a put down, we're just joking. But with our kids, sometimes it's not funny. And sometimes people joke with us and it's not funny either. You're like, they say it's not really a joke if there's an inch of truth to it. Or a bit of truth to it. So try to avoid sarcasm with our kids. And even when they get older and teenagers, where that's their favorite thing is to be sarcastic, step away from it, go brain dead, say I know. And love them even when they're not lovable. And I think as parents, that's one of the hardest things to do, is when they're being really bad. I love you. I don't love the way you're acting. Would you, and I'm really too mad to deal with you right now. And I know when they're throwing a fit and all that, but try to think, these are just, we can't, you don't use them all in one sitting or all that, but these are ways to build that relationship. And that relationships helps our children come to us, and that's the key. When they're 18, 16, 12, we want them to come to us and ask them, somebody's offering me something called, whatever drug it is, or you want them to be able to trust you and that you're not going to get mad at them, that you have even when Mom, I tried this. Okay, let's talk about this. I can't believe you did. They're not going to come to you, So think about those things, how you can build that. And I think the thing about arguing is, when you argue all the time, there's no time for a loving relationship. You don't have the energy. Go to bed, get out of my sight, go outside. When that constant arguing and nagging, it wears you down, and you don't have an energy to build that relationship. And so that was our first lesson. Our second lesson was about teaching responsibility without losing their love. And the key to this is, and think about how you can do this, kids who learn from their small mistakes early in life are far less likely to make tragic mistakes later on. If you allow them to make mistakes now, we get off of our helicopter, get out of our helicopter, and allow our children to make mistakes now, we are going to have less. We always hear the tragedy of the kids who go off to college and they over alcohol, drugs, all these sort of things. They find yourself in situations. Sometimes those don't end. That can end tragically. So let them make little mistakes now. They forget to lock their bike up and they lose a bike. If they forget their phone somewhere and they lose a phone, you've given them a responsibility and they've blown it. Let it go. No harping. Remember, you're not going to nag. Oh, I'm sorry you lost your bike. I know you feel really bad. As soon as you save up enough money, we'll get you a new one. They know they lost it. They know it was irresponsible. They know all those things you're yelling at them. But we want to give them an opportunity, make those mistakes, and then they learn from them while they're with you. Because I think, what do we learn the most from? We make a mistake. We learn something. We make a mistake at work. Somebody says, hey, you didn't do that right. There's a better chance we're not going to do that again. When we make a mistake, and we do it all the time. We make mistakes all the time, and that's how we learn, and that's how our kids learn. So allowing them to try to cook something in the kitchen that doesn't turn out, or just allowing them to make decisions and then follow up and see if that was a mistake. They want to join a team, that they're gonna bail out before the end. They don't want them to stick to it. That's you say you can do it, but you can do it as long as you stay till the end. Well, the next time they want to join a team, they're going to have learned that, rather than you telling them, well, you'll never stay to the end of that. You don't want to do this. It's going to be too much hard. It's going to be this or that. let them try it. Make them follow through to the end. The next time they're going to make a decision like that, they're going to know it. They're going to know it. So, and when you use empathy, when you say, I'm so sorry you lost your bike, you know, I know that feels really bad. Well, that you're showing empathy, and the bad is them losing their bike. It's not, you're not being mad at them. That's not the bad consequence. You love them. I love you even if you do lose all your bikes. You know, you bought this one, you lose that one, well, you'll save up and you get another one or whatever, skateboard or whatever it is. But that takes you from being the bad guy, because I'm really sorry you feel bad about that, but it puts it, and then the bad guy is the consequence to the behavior. So you're not harping on them, constantly. And our third one, how about setting limits without waging war? Remember, setting limits, I'll allow you to do this. We talked about that. No? Enforceable statements are what you say to your child. You can play Nintendo as long as it doesn't bother anybody else. When you start fighting with your brother, well, then you don't play anymore. You set those enforceable. And I think you've got notes on that. I think that's in one of yours. You set the enforceable statements. You can come to the store. We talked about that. You can come to the store with me as long as you don't cause a problem for me or anybody else at the store. Then, yeah. So thinking about giving those, I will talk with you as soon as your voice is as quiet as mine. Those are enforceable statements that you can use. And thinking about that and remember we talked about thinking about it ahead of time. You know, what am I going to say when you know if you're going to go to the store or getting ready for school in the morning or whatever, where are the consequences? And where are the behaviors that aren't good? Thinking about what you're going to say ahead of time, planning, I think gives us much more lead than we're not, yelling and screaming and, gosh, I can't believe you did that, do that. And how do you get your kids to listen the first time? You don't say it a second time. No, you can go to bed now or you can go to bed later. And do you remember we talked about the other statement was, or go to bed in 15 minutes. The other statement is, don't worry, I'll take care of it. About don't worry, I'll take care of it. The children are fighting over the TV and you set the limits, so the next day the TV's gone. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. But they've got to be decisions that you can stick with. I think the first night I told a story about the man behind me. I was in line to get on an airplane, and the guy behind me was yelling at his kid, if you don't stop that, I'm going to take that Nintendo. I'm going to take it. He set it for about 15 minutes, or he's going to take whatever toy this kid had. And he wasn't going to take that toy. The kid knew he wasn't, because the dad didn't want to fight with that kid the whole time he's on the airplane. So, he's making a statement. It's not happening. So when we say those statements, you don't do that, I'm going to kick you out, or I'm going to take this. Your kids know what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. If you do that, you're going to stay in the room for the rest of the week. Are they? No. So we say those statements, and they're not enforceable statements because we're not going to enforce them. But we do need to, and we are the ones that train our children. So if our children don't listen to us, we've got to figure out how to get that to happen, right? That's a fact. We're their parent. We're the one. And, of course, you're going to have kids. There's all sorts of levels of kids, and there's stubborn kids and not so stubborn kids and strong-willed kids and that. We have lots of different kids and lots of different personalities. But how our children turn out reflect a lot on our parenting skills and whether they listen to us or not, or whether they're respectful or not has a lot to how we let them treat us. And how they treat us is generally how they go out in the world and treat others. So if we can get them to treat us with respect and we treat them with mutual respect, you're going to raise a pretty awesome kid. All right, and our lesson 4 is avoiding power struggles. Anybody had any power struggles with their kids? If they're 2, they power struggle about clothes. If they're 6 and 7, there's just so many things that what to eat. Anybody worry about what to eat with your kids? Everybody eats whatever you put out for them? No. And there's some things that, we avoid power struggles. Can we really, one of the best examples here, can you really force your child to brush your teeth with actually going in there and brushing them for them? you know. But how about, you know, getting our children to face consequences? There's some things we, you know, eat your dinner, unless you stuff it in their face. You can't, there's some things you can't force people to do. So if you can have consequences, you know, what consequences, I think we talked about, if I only give snacks to kids who brush their teeth. I only give sugar snacks to kids who brush their teeth. Or whatever, I only give, you know, I only give sugar snacks to kids who go to bed when I ask them to. Or I only give treats, you know, what are your struggles with that? And I think the other thing is when your child does something, no, yells right in your face, no, and maybe they're not a defiant child. Maybe they just had an outburst, they had a really bad day, everybody was at school's on them, you're now going, okay, now do this. So they yell at you and you're ready to yell right back at them. What should you do? I know. Exactly. Yeah. Tell them that you'll talk, because what happens when we discipline our kids in anger? We don't win. But generally when we discipline our kids in anger, we discipline over what we probably needed to because we're mad. We're either that we're giving consequences that are much greater than the crime because we're mad. So if we walk away from that situation and come back, you know, I love you too much to argue with you, fight with you right now. You cool down, I'll cool down. And then, you know, as we talked about before, you delay the consequences. Your children have a lot more time to stew and think, oh, what is going to happen? You know, am I getting a spanking? Is the Nintendo going away? You know, am I having to walk to school? You know, what is the consequence going to be? So just delaying and not acting in anger, your children just feel they have a lot more confidence because you scare them when you're mad. You know, my mom used to get mad at me. It would scare me or my dad. You're like, ah! But it's not that we want to put a healthy fear, and we don't want to scare them. That's going to have damaging effects on our relationship with them. And the consequences are, you know, if you don't you're not going to have a treat if you don't brush your teeth, or you're not going to get a treat if you don't go to bed on time. You have to stick with it the next day. When you give the rest of the kids whatever it is that they get, or you know, something like that, or they get to go with you, you have to make sure you stick with that consequence. And I think that's hard because if you've got more than one child and you haven't taken consequences away from one, and then the other ones get to go to McDonald's and that one doesn't, but you'll only have to do that once because that child will remember that he's the only one or she's the only one. If you make it a strong enough consequence.
How about if I say you can't come to your own birthday party and still be back?
That's not gonna happen.
That is gonna happen.
Not to be realistic, like, I guess like for my son, that's what I go through. He gets in trouble, and so like, we have like a family night. So what I do is, like, for family night we do pizza and watch a movie. Mm-hmm. So if you're in trouble, you get a cold sandwich. You don't get water. You don't get juice. You get water. You don't get to watch the movie. You gotta go straight to bed. So it's kind of like start small, do something realistic. And so like ever since we started, and I was consistent with it, I haven't had a behavior problem out of him. So I mean, start small, do something realistic, take something realistic away. Don't say something like a birthday.
He's not going to his birthday party, really.
But I'm saying,
party. Oh, because I have 4 other kids whose birthdays at the same time. I mean, 3 other kids. Yeah. The other two are going to the party, but you're not. Right. And everybody's birthday is in November. And he's not. I've already got his babysitter.
Well, you know, and if that's a consequence that he will remember, that's a consequence to remember. If you think that punishment fits the crime, you know, that's a consequence that he'll remember. But those are the ones. If he consequence like that, or a consequence like taking the TV night away, they'll remember those.
And he told me, that's what he said. Because last year we had a behavior problem out of him, but this year since school rolled in, he said that I asked him. Well, it was asked, why are you acting better now? Why are we getting better behavior out of you? He said, because the punishments got harder. Mm-hmm. So once I got harder and consistent with the punishments, I got better results.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think for parents, we get so busy, consistency is really hard a lot of times. And to stay true, I know it's always harder. With my oldest son, I feel like he was grounded all the time. It's almost harder for parents to try to remember they're grounded. Okay, now what can't they have? What can't they use? What did I say they were? How long was that? It's almost harder than if you just have a consequence and you take care of it than trying to remember what everybody's grounded from and, what they can't, what toys they can't play with and how long. I think, yeah. Yeah.
I use a calendar for us. I have to put everything on paper because my life is a little busy. So once you get that calendar and you draw a line through it and you say this is your punishment week, and you just scratch it off as it goes, you already know what he can.
Yep.
He knows what he can't do. So you got to make it visual.
Yeah.
That's good.
And it just, I think that's the key thing is helping them learn consequences to behaviors. And that will significantly, when somebody else tells them down the road, if you do this, this is going to be the consequence. They'll be able to remember back to that and say, that wasn't good, but consequence of detention in school or consequences of, whatever the behaviors are, removed from their friend group, then those ones are going to make a difference. Losing a birthday is definitely a consequence that will. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna tell that story to his grandkids.
Well, and I think one of on the little our little handout, the more we try to hoard control, the more we try to control, the more we lose it. The more we share control with our kids, the more control you gain. And that almost seems like an opposite.
Reverse psychology.
Well, but it almost seems like an opposite of it. If you try it, you will. It says wise parents gain control they need by giving away the control they don't need. So that's when we give our kids choices. We give a control away of things we don't need control of. We don't need to control what they wear to school as long as it's appropriate. We don't need to control if they have peas or carrots. We don't need to control. There's a lot of things we don't need to control, but we choose to. So if we give our kids those little decisions to make, it's sort of like, I think we'll talk about it here. It's like a checking account. You make a little deposit, a little deposit, a little deposit. Pretty soon you can withdraw a whole bunch. It's with your kids. You give them a little choice, a little choice, a little choice, a little choice, and then when you have to make a big decision for them, you're not going to have as much fight with that because you have given them control. So they don't feel like you're always bossing them around, even though you're reverse psychology. You're giving them choices of things that you approve of. So sharing control is lost my train of thought here. Sharing control with them, it's just amazing. It just really, like I told my daughter in 6th grade, you can fail 6th grade if you want to. If you need my help, you can ask for it, but I'm not going to do your homework for you. Her grades dipped down, and then I've never looked at her homework since, and she's a junior. But I've always told her, I'm here to help you, but I'm not doing it for you, and I'm not looking at your notes every day, and I'm not talking to your teacher every day, because I think you are smart enough and bright enough to do that on your own. And if you don't think you can, then you let me know. If you don't think you can keep, then we'll keep in touch with the teacher, do whatever. But you need to be able to make those say those things, and so know that your kids know that I didn't start helping her the next week. I didn't start helping her when her grades started dipping. I'm not helping her, but I didn't get on her, and I wasn't, because that ruins a relationship. Now at 16, it's still kind of tricky to have a relationship with a 16-year-old daughter some days, but I didn't use the homework thing to ruin my relationship with her, because it was between her and my husband. We fought all the time. Get her, you do it. I know you get her, because she was just not doing what she's supposed to do. But once we gave her the control, she's done really well with it ever since. So we gain control by giving her control. Now, if you look on 4.1, those of you that have the, that's why I'm looking at this, I'm like, I can go with that. The first sentence says, control, like love, is something that slips through our fingers when we demand it, yet but comes in abundance when we share it. It's on page 35. We lose control or we lose love, if you put it in that, when we demand it. So it talks about some of the choices that we make. Rush hour traffic, we were just talking about rush hour traffic. Control is a life or death matter. If we share it or risk that our kids will harm themselves trying to wrench it out of our hands. I think that some kids have gone as far as, some kids will prove to their parents that, they're not in control. They can come home whenever they want to. They find themselves out late and in bad situations. They want to show you they can be in control. There's eating disorders, kids trying to show their parents they can be in control of that. Because if you have no control in your life, there's something you want to grab onto and control. So if we can help our kids, we can give that to them. Does that make sense? Did you have any questions on that, how you would give control to your kids?
I'm curious when you start talking about giving them control. You have age range in mind.
I'm talking about control that's for their limit, their age,
Appropriate.
age appropriate. So if you control of, if you've got a teenager, you can be in control of your grades. And if they're playing sports, the teachers are going to let them know if they can play or not because they didn't do their grades. They can be in control of that. If you control it, they'll go to college and they'll never learn how to do their own grades. They'll never learn how to get their own homework. You can, you can let them get up. The consequences are if you're tardy or you make choices, they can set their own alarm clock. When they're littler, they can control, eat dinner at night. You're trying to decide peas or carrots. You can ask them. They can make that choice. At breakfast in the morning, do you want eggs or do you want toast? You can ask them because does it really matter? It's those things when they're younger that don't really matter. Or do you want to come in at 10:30 or 11? They're probably going to say 11, but 11 was your limit. So only giving choices that are what you feel comfortable with. If your child is playing at a friend's house, it's hard to get them to come home. In their grade school, would you like to come home at 3:30 or 4? Do you want an apple for a snack or a peach? Think about the things that we say, here's your snack today. Do you want raisins or goldfish? I think that we give the little control things, and they don't seem like much, but then the children feel it's like that little bank account. Oh, well then mom says, you cannot go out with that friend. You make that parental decision on a choice they can't make. Then they're not going to gripe with you because you have all week. Do you want turkey or ham for lunch? Do you want to wear the red tennis shoes or the green tennis shoes? Do you want your friend to come over here or do you want to go over there? Do you want me to drive you or do you, those little choices at all different ages. But giving them those choices, when you have to come up with a big decision, then you're going to have something in the checking account. I explain that same way with a relationship. You have a relationship with your spouse or friend, you put stuff, every time you say you love them and you build up their checking account. So when they mess up or you mess up, you've got something in that checking account to go back on. And I think that with our kids, we love them, we play into them. Then when we make a mistake, we've got something in the checking account, or they have something in their checking account. So when we have to say no, then they're not tapped out. Does that make sense? Maybe didn't explain it quite as clearly, but I've always used that scenario with my husband and I because we put stuff in each other's checking account, whether we did a nice thing or we, whatever, or you said something nice, did something nice. You put something in your checking account, and then when they mess up, you're not right at the tightrope. You're not ready to snap because you've got something in your account. And when it's overdrawn, just like our kids, when it's overdrawn, it's overdrawn, and that's when that you need to start with that with a relationship. You need to start paying back into that account. But I think that's with our kids. Every little decision puts into their bank account, and then when you tell them no, flat out no, they'll know that they've made some decisions and you've trusted them to make those choices, but now there's a decision that, no, I don't want you to hang out with that child, but you've let them make other choices that they're not tapped out. They're not overdrawn. Rules for, just asking, the bottom of page 45 says, rules for providing choices. Only give choices that fit your value system. Only give choices if you don't want them out later or if you don't want them with certain friends, that wouldn't be a choice you'd give them. You only give them choices that you're comfortable with and that you can stand behind. And give 99% of your choices when things are going well. And this is on your notes. So if you didn't bring your notes with you, when things are going well. You're having a really bad day with your kid, and your kid's being disobedient, and that's not when you're building in. That's when you're setting the rules down, and you're letting the consequences take their course. So 99%, and give choices before your child becomes resistant. doesn't want to go to bed. Well, before they get to not wanting to go to bed, do you want to brush your teeth now or get your pajamas on now? Do you want to go to bed now or in 5 minutes? Do you want to read your story first or read it? You want to read your story now or read it when we're in bed? And even with your older children, choices about who their friends are and curfews and things like that, giving them choices on those things that fit your value system before it becomes a big deal. I always said, talk to your kids about sex before they're thinking about sex. Talk to your kids about things talk to your kids about alcohol, talk to your kids about drugs before they're in that level to think about it, because you want them to have decision-making process. So, you want to give them, when things are going well, is when you're having a great day with your child, is when you want to bring up things that might be a little bit trickier. With each choice, give 2 options. Do you want to come home now or now? With each choice, as we talk, give 2 options and have them make a quick decision. If they want to hem and haw just because they want to argue with you, then make the decision for them, and next time they'll know they can make it quicker. Does that make sense? Because I think some kids in the morning, do you want to wear the red t-shirt or the green? I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. And you're like, okay, you're wearing red. Tomorrow you make a decision if you can make it quick. What do you want for breakfast? I don't think I want either of those. Okay, we're having eggs. You can make those choices, but that's one of the things about making those decisions. And use care in not using threats as choices. How could you use a threat as a choice? You do it now or I'm going to. That's a threat, right? You don't want to. You want to try to give them 2 choices. And choices just eliminate power struggles. And eliminating power struggles gives your kids more vocabulary. They learn to make decisions. They learn to make choices quickly. The more choices we're given, the more choices we have, the more experiences we have, right? You see people, kids who have made a lot of choices, they can make a good choice. They can make a decision because they have an opportunity to. They don't have somebody always telling them what their choices are. And as you get older, you don't want other kids telling your kids what their choices are. You want them to have been able to make quick decisions because you give an opportunity down the road. So if they can have drugs or run away, then they can make a quick decision. So give them opportunity to make good choices. Because what happens when people feel they've lost all power and control? They'll do just about anything. A couple of examples they have is, what happens if Dad loses his remote? If there were games on and Dad can't find his remote, there's going to be trouble. He's lost power. Where's my remote? Everything's bad. Or think about people on the highway. The power of cutting you off. Drivers get in their car and they have that power to gain that control. You think about they don't care about the other people around you. And there's, I think with choices too, give me liberty or give me death, they said one of the things in here. But there's little choices. Kids will prove us wrong, especially as teenagers, if we've not given them choices. And those are deadly. I can't stress that enough because as we see with statistically how many juveniles are in prison and how many juveniles in these days are going to prison and being tried as an adult. And that's not fair. It's not fair. But we need to give those children an opportunity to make some good decisions and make some mistakes while we're at home. One of the examples in here is talking about when your kids get close to college age, and you maybe had a curfew for them when they were little, about 10, but they're getting ready to go to college. And how are you going to instill? Once they get to college, are they going to have their own curfew? You all went to college. They still live in your house. They do. But at some point, what did you suggest to your child? What do you think what would you think your curfew should be on a school night? And talk about it with them. Oh, I think it should be 3 in the morning. Well, legally you can't be outside past 10, whatever the curfew is. I think it's midnight or 10 o'clock, depending on what day of the week it is. I think our city has a curfew. But, they can't be, okay, so you think 10's a good time? Well, if 10's a good time, how much time do you think it take you to get your homework done? What's the process? So if they do decide, well, I think it should be 11, okay, well, let's try that. Well, the next morning they have a lot of trouble getting up, or they don't get their homework done, or there's consequences to that behavior. So when they make mistakes when they're living in your house, that's easier to take care of than if they make the mistakes when they're away. So they stay up all night when they get to college. They never get to class. They've just paid his first semester of school and taken all Fs. I only have one child who did that. But, you know, they don't, you have to teach them, give those opportunities to make those choices now. When they can, okay, and talk to them about it so that they have that thought process going, not you just need to be home at 10 because I said so. Even though we do say so. All right, we have some choices. I think I skipped over this. We have some choices on here that talks about examples of choices. Tell me if this is a good choice or a bad choice. Just kind of example. The parent says it's time to take a bath. The child says, I'm doing something right now. The parent says, would you rather take a bath now or in 15 minutes?
Bad choice.
Bad choice. What do you think?
Because you gave them options.
Well, you gave them options, which is fine, but had we already come up with some resistance? Right? So if the parent had said, would you like to take a bath now or in 15 minutes first? Before. Because now you come up with resistance. That was kind of a trick, wasn't it?
Do you ask them first to that one? I'm confused. You say, do you want to take a bath in 15 minutes or now first? Instead of asking to do that 1 second.
Does that make sense? Am I just... Yes. Yes.
So what you say, do you want to take a bath now, or do you want to take it in 20 minutes? So then in 20 minutes, and of course they're going to say 20 minutes. So then in 20 minutes, okay, so now it's time to take a bath. Oh, and then all this help bracelet.
So to eliminate all
It's
that.
time to take a bath.
You could have.
Right.
You're
Right, I have that too.
You're exactly right, but the concept, back it up a little bit. If you have a feeling that your child's going to give you resistance on that, what's your consequence? You know, what would be your consequence? Okay, well, you know what? I only read stories to kids who take baths when I tell them. So we're going to go to bed without a story tonight. They know they have to take a bath. Or whatever your behavior is, thinking about, it's trying to get your child to make that decision to follow you without grabbing their arm and spanking them. You know, it's helping them make a decision. You've given them a choice, and the consequences is like, okay, well, then I'll take care of that. And the next day, you've taken something away that's theirs, or you've done. It's allowing children to have those natural consequences to behaviors. Or, well, then don't take a bath. You know, and you smell at school, and your friends are going to notice, or you know, I don't know what is the natural. I think the key to it is thinking about giving them some control, and by giving them options. But before that, you've got to come down to where your word, the very first session where we talked about how do you not say it again? How do you not have to repeat yourself? By letting your child know that you mean it the first time. So when you give them an option, okay, well, you don't want to go to bed right now? That's okay. We'll take care of that later. Whatever your choice is for a consequence to that behavior. But the first session talks about how do you get your kids to listen, and how do you just say it once? And it may be that this lesson comes a little bit later down the road after your child knows that when you say it, you mean it. And they're not going to the birthday party or they're not getting TV night. You know, they're not getting TV night if it's that, you know, they don't get family fun night. What is your consequence? And so I think that has to be established first, and then you establish. Does that make sense? Because trying to do one without having that parental, if you don't have that, I'm only going to say it once, and I mean it. Yeah. That makes sense? That's a really good question, though. Thank you for asking that, because I think it is, we're going through this in kind of an order, but until we have them listening to us on the first time, we're giving them a lot of choices, and they're still being defiant, then we need to figure out where those consequences come in, or what's the choice we need to do, or where's the relationship broken down.
I have done the choice thing. It's like you said, for things that don't matter. Like, do you want parents of pizza?
Right.
Do you want this book or that book?
Right.
You know, or something like that. And they know that they have to, you know, hurry up and make a decision.
Mhm.
And like, the stuff they're supposed to do, like, it's gonna be hard for me to try to.
Well, just start at the, I think it start at the beginning. I think the key is start at the beginning and get your children to listen to you the first time. And that behavior, because as you said, if your children don't and they're running across the road and you say stop and they haven't listened to you all week, or they're going to run right out in front of that car. So at some point we have to set those ground rules that your child is going to listen to you, and that may be just the very basic place to start. You're going to listen to me, you're going to listen to it the first time, because it could save their life. If it's a car or if it's a dog or it's something you're trying to stop them from doing and they're not paying a bit of attention to you, at some point, before you run after them, or before you raise your voice, or before you scream, or before you threaten to spank, you need to at some point have that where they're going to listen to you and respect and so wherever that takes, that's the beginning of it, is making sure they're listening to you. Because you're the most important person. If you build that relationship with them, then they're going to listen to you. But it has to be taught. It's something that's trained, taught, and consistent. And I think that's our kids feel most secure when they've got a shelter around them. And discipline is something that they don't like. But if they can just go and do whatever, there's no security in that. And they really know if anybody really cares about it, because nobody cares when they come in, when they go, who they see, or what they do. So if you build that security that you really care about them, they'll resist it. But you still have built that relationship with them. Any questions? Questions about all that? And just a couple of little closing statements. Kids who never have the freedom to make poor choices never develop the skill to make good ones. And this is in your notes. Kids who never have the freedom to make poor choices never develop the skills to make good ones. So we have to give our kids an opportunity to fail, even though we don't want them to fail. We want to fail, but we have to give them an opportunity to fail, to make choices. And if we give them two options to help them make choices, and one of them, they might find themselves, in a position of having some consequences, allow them to do that, because it makes a big, big, big difference. Big difference. Everybody awake or asleep? All right, I closed right on. I'm right on time. Next time I'm here, we are going to be learning about the 5 love languages, which, if you've ever done that study before, it's really cool. It talks about each one of us speak a love language, and we hear a love language. Like if there's 5 love languages, and everybody that you know, your children, your spouse, your mom, they all speak a love language, and then they all accept one, and sometimes it's the same. But love languages have to do with spending time. Some people like to spend time with you, or you like to spend time. Service. Some people, as you know, are service-oriented. They'll do anything for you. Touch. Some people just need a hug. They hug you every time they see you. Gifts. It's my love language. I give gifts. And words of affirmation. So we're going to talk about that next week, and we're going to talk about how you find out what your child's love language is, and how you build into that. So kind of right on the same lines as what we're doing. The next level is just learning about their love languages. So it's a really cool study, and I'll bring some handouts so you can kind of take a little survey. And each one of our kids are different, and I love it because it works with the people you work with. It works with everybody you know, because everybody speaks a love language. So I'm excited.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'll tell you guys that thank you